been in Africa, been in Malawi, but I think most people are most familiar with the work and what happened in Somalia. I know I've also been in South Africa going during apartheid. Nick shared a lot about that, but the most challenging country for yourself was which one?
Oh, of course, Somalia. Our
Mm.
whole world changed. Suddenly we were living in one country and trying to get to this people group. We couldn't take our children into Somalia,
Mm.
or even where the Somalis lived in the 5 countries. Our oldest son one day was with his daddy, and accidentally the plane landed in Somalia. So he brags that he's been there, but he had gone with his dad to work with the polio victims, handing out crutches in the northern part of Kenya. And when the plane took off, it went the wrong way.
Oh.
And so there he was in Mogadishu, but he likes to brag that he made it, even though his mama said, whoa, that's a little bit much. but I think the big thing was for me was all of a sudden we weren't together. We never went into Somalia together. We felt like if something happened, we didn't want to leave the boys without a parent. And so we made a decision that we would travel in separately. So Nick would go in, and he always went in a lot longer than I did. But when people needed encouragement, or if the nurses needed something, then I would fly in, but we never went in together. So all of a sudden our world was totally different. And in the beginning, we had no way to communicate. It wasn't like now where you have a cell phone and you have a cell tower that will get that call to you. We didn't have that. We finally did get radios in, and it took a long time to get a license for a radio in Kenya. And so we really struggled with how, which is better, to be able to communicate or be legal. And so once we had those radios, it made a big difference, because we made a set time every day to call in and make sure everyone was okay. But Travis, it's really hard to send your husband into places like that, not knowing when he'll come back or if he'll come back. But, I trusted God there, but it became harder to trust God when we started sending other people in, and we felt responsible for them. And we found that we realized the hardest job is not going, because once you're going, you're focused on the task.
Yeah.
The hardest job is sending, because you're the one that's holding them up and needing to pray harder. And we translated that to realize that for the church who sends their children to the nations, that's the hardest job, is being responsible for sending. And I think Nick likes to say, if we really grasp the task of sending, either the church will become even stronger in her task, or she'll quit because the task becomes too hard. And so for parents sending their children, their daughters, their grandparents to the nations, we say to them, you have the hardest job. You have to be the one holding them up. And so as I would put Nick on an airplane, I always, even later when we began going to Believers in Persecution, we didn't get to travel together as much as we had when we were in Malawi and South Africa. And suddenly I realized I had the toughest job. I had to be the one on my knees. I had to be the one praying. I had to be the one doing all the logistics things that kept him going. I had my children. When we lived in Kenya and he would go, our water would go off, and I would have to go to the gas stations and haul 5-gallon buckets home so we had water. There were just so many tasks that I was doing. But I learned after I put him on the plane, I would sit in the car for a few minutes and I would pray. And my prayer always was, okay, God, there is nothing more I can do. You've got to take care of him. And Lord, I pray you will bring him back to me. And then I would make a plan. If he didn't come back, I knew what I would do first, who I would go to help me. And I would set that plan in motion and just say, all right, number 1, number 2, number 3. And then I would go off and I would do all those other things that had to be done and just put it in God's hands and trust.